welcome to a Firstpost POV. The tensions between the United States and European countries continue to escalate, and the center of it is Greenland right here on the map. President Trump is imposing a 10% tariff on multiple European countries who he says is opposing the idea that Greenland should become a part of the United States. In response, the European countries are also preparing sanctions in a moment that is widely being described as one of the worst or the lowest points in transatlantic ties since possibly the Suez Crisis. The question is what happens next, and what does this mean for the relationship between US and Europe, and more importantly, for the people of Greenland. Joining me now to discuss this flashpoint is Mr. Tom Hoyem, who's Denmark's former Minister for Greenland and someone who has a stake in what's happening right now. Thank you so much, sir, for speaking to us on Firstpost.
Well, I speak with you from Karlsruhe in Germany.
Right. We have seen how things have unfolded, whether it was the failure of the talks in Washington led by Mr. J.D. Vance and Secretary Rubio, the later threats of the tariffs, the talk of not taking the military option off the table. How likely in your mind is the possibility of a US military intervention in Greenland?
I hope to say clearly that that is impossible, and there are different reasons for this. The first is that it is a crisis in NATO. It's a very deep crisis. It's the deepest crisis I have experienced, and I'm an older man in my life. But it's also in an incredible discussion, an incredible crisis, because Mr. Trump, the President of the United States, he wishes two things. He wishes that there will be security in this high-risk Arctic area. And we, Denmark, Greenland, we say, yes, please, we wish the same. He has had, United States has had before, nearly 20 bases, air bases, and he has had nearly 20,000 people in Greenland. Now, the United States has only one and only 150 people. And they say we should now have a higher military presence in Greenland. And we say, yes, please, and also you. So there's no discussion about this because we have the same goal. And the second goal for Mr. Trump and the United States is that there are minerals in Greenland and he would like to mine them. And here again, Denmark, Greenland, we say, yes, thank you. And we would like American investment also in Greenland. But in spite of this, Mr. Trump is saying that he would like to own Greenland. And that is, of course, in 2026 impossible, not only discussing Greenland, Denmark, but all over in the world. To start talking about buying people, buying land, that is absurd. And we are so happy that in NATO, we have many countries supporting us, and they have sent some soldiers just to find out how best to secure the Arctic area. And then Mr. Trump has reacted to say what he always says, that he would like to have a higher tariff on precisely these countries. This is a very special way to take a discussion about military to the economic level. And the economic level in Europe is the European Union. And the European Union is united behind Denmark, Greenland. And when we are maybe military weak, Denmark, Greenland towards US, then the European Union is strong economically. We have 450 million inhabitants in Europe, more than in the United States, clearly only the half or less than half of India, but it means that we are economically a strong power, and we are preparing now how to answer Mr. Trump. What we really would like to do is, when you said that the meeting in Washington did not function, that's not correct. It was the first time that politicians were sitting around the table and discussing how can we go on. We had different positions, that's correct, but we also said how can we try to find a common solution to this. And I think that we have two important meetings just these days. They have actually started in Brussels. We have the European Union, all the leaders together to say how can we act here? What is the clever way to do it? And the other one is in Davos, in Switzerland. There will be a meeting where all the leaders from Europe and the world leaders will meet Mr. Trump personally and discuss this issue. So yes, it is a serious crisis, a very serious crisis, but also a crisis which, if it really ends like that, then the whole of Europe will implode. Right. So of course we have to find a solution.
Right. Now, one of the theories floating around is that Europe did try to appease the Trump administration when it came to power, whether it was on trade or Ukraine or on a lot of issues. There was an effort to play ball with the president. But then Donald Trump turns around and imposes these 10% tariffs, saying, now I want Greenland. Do you think the strategy of appeasing President Trump has perhaps backfired? And that ties into my question about the talks that happened. When you sit down across the table to discuss the sovereignty of your own land, is that in any way legitimizing the illegal demands being made by President Trump? The fact that a country can say, I want this land, and the leadership of that country has to sit across from the Americans and discuss those illegal claims. Do you think that was in any way rewarding the brazen imperialism that Mr. Trump was promoting?
Well, there are, of course, idealistic discussions, rhetoric, and then there are political realities. But when we had this first meeting, our first point was we do in no way accept buying. Greenland is for the Greenlandic people. Greenland is a part of the Danish kingdom, and we do no way accept this. But even when two countries have different opinions, you can meet and talk about it if you make your own point of view very clear, and we have done that. And we have done that not, and please be aware of this, not in the name only of the Kingdom of Denmark, Greenland, Denmark, and the Faroe Islands, but for all countries in the whole world. It's a bit pathetic, but it would be impossible if one country could simply try to own another country by buying it. Then the whole rule of the world order would break. I think we have tried what we could, but now, precisely in this situation, we are not negotiating at the beginning. We are saying we can also escalate if Mr. Trump wants to escalate. But this is a threat from both sides. The real serious political work is to sit down and discuss the issue.
Right. Now, I'm also wondering about why President Trump is harping on owning Greenland instead of deepening cooperation with Denmark in Greenland. There was a leaked letter written by President Trump to Norway, which just came to light a couple of hours ago, in which President Trump says, you did not give me the Nobel Prize, and now I don't care about peace. Greenland has to be ours. And a lot of people have linked President Trump's snub for the Nobel to his ambitions in Greenland. Do you think a bruised ego perhaps is also an ultimate driver in what President Trump is saying, or is this just strategic?
When I heard about this letter to the Norwegian Prime Minister, I actually thought it was a fake, because it's the first time in my long life that I have experienced something ridiculous in this way, which has nothing to do with America, nothing to do with American politics, nothing to do with the Parliament, the Congress, the Senate. It's only Mr. Trump personally. And I have not seen before strong leaders, but I've never seen someone so personalized as Mr. Trump. So I thought it was a fake. Unfortunately, it was not a fake. He has written this letter, and that means that as long time as he's still a president, and he might stay for 3 years, for us it is very important for us to talk also with his superiors, because Mr. Trump has superiors too, the voters of America and the Parliament. And we are trying to get as much in contact with both groups, of course, the Congress, the member of Senate, some of them are visiting Copenhagen, but we're also trying, by talking with you just in this moment, trying in the world to tell what is the reality, I have to say the truth, behind these big discussions.
Right. In Denmark, though, what's the worst case assessment right now about these unfolding tensions? Clearly, Denmark is focused on diplomacy. It is falling back on European solidarity to push back against this rhetoric from President Trump. But within the administration, I'm sure there are people who are also preparing for a worst case situation. What would that be right now?
The worst case would be that NATO implodes, because NATO is the guarantee for the peace in Europe, has been for the last more than 70 years. And the worst case would be that it will implode, because, of course, America is the big power in NATO. And if they start to threaten, or even, well, I don't wish to think that, but even to attack another member of NATO, then NATO disappears, then it is a crisis in NATO, which means that it will implode. That is the worst scenario we can see in front of us, but we are certainly trying to avoid this. But the scenario that Greenland would be a part of America, you can rule that out.
Right. Now, there's also questions about if any concessions can be made to appease Trump at this point. The United States already has a lot of multitude in Greenland. They have bases there, they've stationed soldiers there. So the United States does have significant control over the strategy of the Arctic and Greenland. What more can Denmark possibly give to President Trump to say, we've given you this much, we're meeting you halfway, let's abandon this whole takeover Greenland, owning Greenland statement?
But please understand this correctly. The Arctic area is a security risk area. And Mr. Trump is saying we want more military there. And we say, yes, 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 you are very welcome. You have 17 or 18 bases. You could open them tomorrow. You can send your soldiers there tomorrow. And we, Denmark, we have already invested billions of euros in the upgrading of the military in the Greenland and the Arctic area. So we are not only promising or trying to give something away, we are saying this is your right. You're very welcome, America, to send as much military. And we are now backed by 8 members of the NATO, which have already sent their own groups, symbolic, but also to find out how can we strengthen the defense of Greenland and the Arctic area in the future. And we have also said about the minerals and the possibility of a mining, yes, please, we would like your investments there. So there's nothing in your way of, or not your way, sorry, but in Mr. Trump's way of making a deal. There is no deal to be made, but because it has been offered, and the limit for this deal is, of course, that we have to follow, of course, international rule of law, and Greenland and Denmark, we are together in the Kingdom of Denmark, and there is no way of dividing Greenland and Denmark. We are one people. I can also explain it in this way. 300 years we have been together. We are married with each other. It's a family. A lot of Greenlandic men or women married with Danish women and men. We have 56,000 inhabitants in Greenland, but we have 17,000 in Denmark itself, Greenlandic people, and we have 7,000 Danes in Greenland. It means we are that close as a family that it is impossible to divide us. And the independence of Greenland, we, Denmark, have said that is decided by the Greenlandic people themselves. So to think of a deal you can do now when the president chose to talk about tariff, there it is of course possible to negotiate or to escalate if necessary.
You mentioned the independence of Greenland, and that's something Denmark has said, it's up to you, it's not up to us. Do you fear that the United States and the sort of technological advantage that they have, whether that's a social media platform like X or Facebook, do you think the Americans could perhaps use that technological advantage to shape the narrative within Greenland, to perhaps push for Greenland's independence as a first step towards acquisition? Are those fears also there?
No, the first point you made, it is correct that we, Denmark, accept that Greenland develops as it would like. I was the last minister of Greenland, and when I started in 1982, I was in the Danish government responsible for Greenland, and I had 10,000 employees in my ministry. I suggested myself to close this ministry, and when I closed it in 1987, 5 years later, there were only 2,000 employees because we had already given the authority to Greenland. And 1973, Greenland joined the European Union together with Denmark, but it wished to go out of the European Union, and I was the cabinet minister who actually negotiated, Trump would say, the deal with the European Union, and Greenland is no longer a member of the European Union, left it in 1985. So the whole development, Greenland decides itself. We have in the parliament decided in a law from 2009 that if there is a referendum in Greenland and a majority says we would like to be independent, then this decision would go to the Danish parliament and the Danish parliament would vote yes. But of course it is not possible to think of this big island. I know how big India is, but Greenland is really also big. and with 56,000 inhabitants, they can't be in the normal way totally independent. No country, also India, is not independent. We are always depending on something, and here it would be depending on the great powers around, and that means that Greenland and Denmark want now to be as close together as we can.
Right. Let's take a step back and look at the impact on transatlantic ties now. President Trump has threatened those tariffs from February 1st. Do you see the White House going further, maybe cutting off weapons support to Ukraine, scaling back intelligence sharing with Europe? Do you see more stricter measures on Europe in the offing? And how would you see the European Union respond to some of those measures?
Well, when we talk about Ukraine, which is a country I not only love, I have visited many, many times, and we know all the European countries. We know that this is not a fight about Ukraine. This is a fight for the whole of Europe. And it is simply not possible that Mr. Putin takes over a neighbor country. So we are as strong as we can. And if you try to count all the European countries, then we are quite strong. Of course, it is better. It is not only better, it is much better when the United States is in it. And until now, they have been. Of course, Mr. Trump misjudged himself. He thought that he could talk with Putin and then the whole war could stop. That has not happened. But clearly, Ukraine is strongly defending itself with the European countries behind it.
Are you confident that the European solidarity that we've seen in the last couple of days on the matter of Greenland will sustain in the days to come? I ask because there are leaders within Europe who are on very close terms with President Trump. They have their own personal equations with him, the likes of Italian Prime Minister Meloni and Hungary's Mr. Viktor Orban. Are you confident that European solidarity will last throughout this issue, or will Trump try to divide and conquer Europe politically?
No, you know that in the old Latin it's called divide et impera, and that is what he tries. But even, or not even, also Mrs. Meloni, she has talked directly with Mr. Trump and said, Mr. Trump, you have to understand, we Europeans, even when I am Meloni like you, Mr. Trump, then we Europeans, we are together, and you should stop this. So no, this way of dividing Europe, I don't believe that. We have been so strongly together for many years, and we are, even when that's a long way from Greenland down to, say, Italy, then we are in the same part of the world, and we are depending on each other. No, I don't think it will be possible for Mr. Trump to divide and in this way rule.
Right. Now, even if this flashpoint is settled diplomatically, how do you see the impact of what's happened in the last couple of months play out for European countries, including Denmark? Will there be more apprehension towards the United States? Will they look to balance their US ties with other major powers? How would Denmark approach the world if and when this crisis is over?
Well, let me say that I'm personally very sad because I'm 84 years old. I have always lived with peace from NATO. I have met a lot of leaders who do not exist anymore. Personally, I met Indira Gandhi, for instance, in Copenhagen when she visited Copenhagen. And we have always had this frame that if this NATO implodes, then it has not only a serious consequence for, of course, our trust in America, but the whole world. Also, India's trust in America will disappear, or at least be very harmed, because you will say, well, if they're promising something there and they do not keep their promises, how can we then make, Mr. Trump's words, a deal in the future?
Now, finally, let me just ask you, how do you see this reaching some sort of a conclusion in the coming days? What's your realistic assumption of where you see this being solved? Does it happen on the talking table? Does it remain in this limbo throughout the Trump presidency? What's the realistic assessment of where you're expecting this to go?
Of course, this very disturbing factor in our modern time is the social media, because through social medias, you're already escalating things. And Mr. Trump is excellent in using these social medias. But real politics, I've seen crises coming and going through my life, but real politics is made when people are sitting around the table and discussing the substance. And I'm convinced, I'm not only hoping, I'm convinced that this will be de-escalated and that the normal diplomatic negotiations will take place. And of course, Mr. Trump is always provoking, and he has reached things. For instance, he has reached that we are investing all the NATO member states more in military than we did before. That's okay. And that he has focused on the Arctic area, which for many years were most looked upon as a tourist goal or as a romantic area with ice bears and polar bears and so on, that he has focused on the strategy and the security in the Arctic. I'm grateful for that, but I'm absolutely sure that we have to de-escalate, and we will de-escalate, and the normal political system will take over.
I know I said last question, but I have to ask you, President Trump's major argument has been that Russia and China are militarizing the Arctic, that they are making regular port calls in Greenland, and that's why the United States need Greenland. How real is this claim by President Trump that Russia and China are dominating the Arctic? Yes, they have a lot of bases there, but is it true that the threat is of that level that President Trump makes it up to be?
No, I don't think that is true. It is correct that the last years, many years, not only Putin, but also Soviet before him, they have actually military increased the presence in the Arctic area. That's correct. And that has many reasons. One is that the climate changes means that you can suddenly sail different ways in the Arctic, which you couldn't do before. So in this way, the climate changes have made the Arctic area more interesting, and Russia is certainly there. China less. China is working in completely different ways. Mr. Trump is saying there are Chinese ships around there. There are no Chinese ships around there. China is working normally in the way in Africa, other places where they want to have some possibilities to develop. They use the infrastructure, and they have tried twice to buy infrastructure in Greenland, and that has both these times for airport and for some mining has been told to them that is not possible, and Denmark and America has invested instead. So the Chinese fear I don't really see, and Russia, I think they have a kind of a feeling that, of course, the Arctic area is very, very important, but not for trying to take over Greenland.
Right. I think it's fair to say this is an unprecedented flashpoint between the United States and Europe, where a sitting American president decides he wants to take over European soil. Like you said, let's hope diplomacy prevails and things are sorted out on the talking table and not on the battlefield. Thank you so much, Mr. Tom Hoyem, for speaking to us on Firstpost.
I also say thank you very much from Germany.
The world doesn't fit in boxes, so why should your news? From battlefields to negotiation tables, from internet outrage to real-world injustice. The conversations everyone is having and the ones they're avoiding. It's the same show, but this new year, Firstpost America gets a new look. I'm Kerry Johnston, and this is Firstpost America.